Most men think a woman catches feelings when she becomes emotional, affectionate, or expressive. That belief is comforting, but it is also the reason most men destroy attraction right at the moment it begins. Stoicism teaches a truth that completely contradicts modern dating advice. A woman does not fall when she feels more emotion. She falls when she feels less control. And this is where most men get it wrong. The moment a man senses that a woman is getting attached, he changes. He becomes more available, more reassuring, more emotionally present. He starts trying to secure the connection, believing that consistency and effort will lock in her feelings. In reality, this is the exact moment attraction begins to collapse. When a woman truly starts catching feelings, her emotional world becomes more sensitive, not more stable. She becomes more aware of how much influence you have over her emotions. And influence, when mishandled, triggers resistance instead of closeness. Most men respond to her growing feelings by leaning in emotionally. They explain more. They reassure more. They make themselves easier to read. They remove uncertainty. Stoicism teaches that uncertainty is not cruelty. It is polarity. When you remove uncertainty at the wrong time, you remove the space where desire breathes. You replace emotional tension with emotional certainty. And certainty feels safe, but it is rarely exciting. This is why so many men hear the words, "I don't know what changed," or "You're different lately," right after things seem to be going well. Nothing changed on her side. Everything changed on his. A woman catching feelings does not want to feel chased. She wants to feel drawn. She wants to feel that your life, your direction, and your emotional center still exist independently of her emotions. Stoicism teaches that attachment deepens when one person remains grounded while the other feels emotional movement. The grounded one becomes the anchor. The reactive one becomes the follower. Most men panic when they sense her attachment because they fear losing it. And fear always leaks through behaviour. It shows up as over-explaining, as over-availability, as emotional hovering. What she was responding to initially was your calm, your self-command, your emotional independence. When that disappears, the feeling she was developing has nowhere to land. This video is not about tricks. It is not about withholding emotion, and it is not about playing games. It is about understanding the precise moment when attraction becomes fragile, and why doing more at that moment is often the biggest mistake a man can make. By the end of this video, you will understand the real signs she is catching feelings, why reassurance at the wrong time kills attraction, and how Stoic restraint allows emotions to deepen naturally. If you've ever felt a connection slipping right when it seemed to be growing, stay with me. Because once you understand this Stoic truth, you stop chasing feelings and start allowing them to attach on their own. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits, just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section number 1. The moment she starts feeling and why men misread it. The moment a woman truly starts catching feelings is rarely dramatic, obvious, or romantic. It does not look like constant texting, emotional confessions, or sudden vulnerability. Stoicism teaches that emotional attachment begins quietly, internally, and often unconsciously. This is why most men misread it. They are looking for visible emotion, while the real shift is happening beneath the surface. When a woman starts developing real feelings, her behavior does not become louder. It becomes more attentive. She notices patterns. She pays closer attention to your reactions. She becomes more sensitive to changes in your energy. Her emotional system is assessing safety, consistency, and stability, not excitement alone. This is where men often make their first mistake. They interpret her increased attention as a signal to escalate emotionally. Most men believe that when a woman feels more, they should feel more too. They lean in harder, open up faster, and try to create emotional closeness through reassurance. In doing so, they disrupt the very balance that allowed feelings to grow. Stoicism teaches that attachment deepens when one person remains centered while the other is in motion. When both move emotionally at the same time, polarity collapses. A woman catching feelings is not asking you to close the distance emotionally. She is observing whether your emotional center remains intact as hers becomes more active. She is unconsciously asking a simple question. Does this man remain himself when emotion enters the dynamic, or does he shift to secure validation? Most men fail this test without realizing it. They start checking in more often. They become easier to read. They remove mystery, not out of manipulation, but out of fear. Fear of losing what feels like progress. Fear of doing something wrong. Fear of not locking it in. And fear is always felt, even when unspoken. Stoicism teaches that emotional leadership is quiet. When you remain calm, consistent, and grounded while she feels more internally, you create contrast. That contrast allows her feelings to attach safely. When you react emotionally to her emotional shift, you introduce instability. Her feelings suddenly have no anchor. This is why women often pull back right after things seem to be going well. It is not because she lost interest. It is because the dynamic changed. The man she was starting to feel something for is no longer fully present in himself. He is present in the outcome. A Stoic man understands that the early stage of emotional attachment is fragile. It requires restraint, not escalation. It requires presence without pressure, consistency without reassurance, and confidence without explanation. When you maintain your emotional posture, her feelings are allowed to deepen naturally. The truth is simple, but difficult to accept. When she starts catching feelings, your job is not to increase emotional intensity. Your job is to stay the same man she started feeling something for. Section number 2. Why men ruin attraction by trying to secure it. Once a man senses that a woman is starting to catch feelings, his instinct is to protect the connection. He wants certainty. He wants reassurance. He wants to reduce risk. Stoicism teaches that this instinct is natural, but dangerous when acted on prematurely. Attraction does not grow through security-seeking behavior. It grows through emotional alignment and polarity. When a man begins trying to secure a woman's feelings, his behavior subtly changes. He starts initiating more. He explains intentions more clearly. He offers reassurance more frequently. He adjusts his schedule more quickly. None of these actions feel harmful on their own, but together they send a clear message. His emotional center has shifted from self-command to outcome management. A woman who is catching feelings becomes highly sensitive to this shift, not consciously, but emotionally. She feels that the dynamic has lost its balance. What she was responding to was your grounded presence, your sense of direction, and your emotional independence. When those qualities soften into reassurance seeking, the emotional gravity that attracted her begins to weaken. Stoicism teaches that certainty is comforting, but attraction thrives in space. Space allows emotion to move, reflect, and deepen naturally. When a man fills that space with reassurance, explanations, and constant availability, he removes the conditions under which feelings grow. He turns emotional curiosity into emotional pressure. Most men do this because they mistake consistency for escalation. They believe showing more emotion demonstrates commitment. In reality, premature emotional escalation communicates fear of loss. and fear of loss, even when unspoken, is felt as instability. A woman catching feelings does not want to be managed emotionally. She wants to feel drawn toward a man who remains solid in himself. When you try to secure her feelings, you unintentionally make her responsible for your emotional state. That responsibility feels heavy, not romantic. Stoicism emphasizes restraint over reaction. A Stoic man understands that when attraction begins forming, his role is not to chase clarity or confirmation. His role is to maintain the same emotional posture that allowed attraction to emerge in the first place: calm, consistent, self-directed. This is why men often hear phrases like, "I need space," or "things feel different," right after emotional closeness increases. The woman is not rejecting the connection. She is reacting to the shift in the man's energy. The more he tries to secure her, the more she feels the need to protect her emotional autonomy. The Stoic approach is counterintuitive, but powerful. When you sense she is catching feelings, you do not lean in emotionally. You lean into your life. You remain present without hovering. You stay interested without becoming invested prematurely. You allow her feelings to develop without interference. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional discipline. And discipline is what allows attraction to mature instead of collapsing under pressure. Section number 3. The real signs. She is catching feelings, and why men misread them. Most men look for loud signals when a woman is catching feelings. They expect increased texting, emotional confessions, or obvious vulnerability. Stoicism teaches that real emotional attachment shows up differently. It reveals itself through subtle behavioral shifts, not dramatic displays. This is why men often miss it or misinterpret it entirely. One of the first real signs is increased emotional awareness. She becomes more observant of your tone, your reactions, and your consistency. She notices when you are off, distracted, or less present. This is not insecurity. It is emotional investment beginning to form. Her emotions are tuning into yours, even if she has not consciously labeled what she feels. Another sign is that she begins referencing the future indirectly, not through commitment talk, but through language that includes you in her mental timeline. She may mention future events casually, make assumptions about shared time, or speak in ways that imply continuity. Men often misread this as an invitation to lock things down. In reality, it is a test of whether you remain grounded or rush to control the direction. She may also become slightly more sensitive. Small changes in your behavior carry more weight. This sensitivity is often mistaken as neediness, but it is actually emotional openness. Her feelings are beginning to attach, and attachment increases vulnerability. How you respond during this phase determines whether those feelings deepen or retreat. Most men respond incorrectly by trying to reassure her emotions directly. They increase emotional availability, explain intentions, or attempt to stabilize her feelings. Stoicism teaches that emotional leadership does not mean emotional management. When you step in to manage her emotions, you remove her autonomy and weaken attraction. A woman catching feelings is not asking for reassurance. She is observing whether your emotional center remains stable while hers becomes more active. She wants to know if your sense of self exists independently of her emotional state. When it does, her feelings feel safe to grow. When it does not, her emotional system pulls back to protect itself. Men also misread increased comfort as a sign to relax standards. They tolerate behavior they previously would not. They stop leading. They become more accommodating. In doing so, they communicate that attraction has shifted their center. This creates emotional imbalance, not closeness. Stoicism teaches that consistency of character is the most attractive response to emotional change. When you respond to her growing feelings by remaining the same grounded man, you provide an anchor. When you change in response to her emotions, you create instability. The real signs she is catching feelings are not about what she says. They are about how she pays attention, how she includes you, and how sensitive she becomes to shifts in your energy. And the correct response is not escalation, it is restraint. Restraint is not distance, it is discipline. And discipline allows attraction to mature without being suffocated. Section number 4. How to respond when she starts catching feelings without killing it. When a woman starts catching feelings, the most important thing a man can do is not change his emotional posture. Stoicism teaches that attraction does not grow because of what you add, but because of what you do not disturb. The moment you sense her emotional shift, the temptation is to respond emotionally. That instinct is exactly what must be resisted. The correct response is not emotional escalation. It is emotional continuity. You remain present, attentive, and engaged, but you do not accelerate intimacy, seek reassurance, or attempt to define the connection prematurely. You allow her feelings to move while you remain centered. This balance is what creates emotional safety without pressure. Most men panic internally when they sense her attachment growing. They fear losing momentum. They fear missteps. They fear that if they do not act, the moment will pass. Stoicism teaches that fear-driven action is always visible, even when subtle. It appears as overcommunication, excessive availability, and emotional hovering. These behaviors signal that you are trying to manage an outcome instead of living your life. A Stoic man responds differently. He keeps his routines, he maintains his pace, he continues prioritizing his work, discipline, and direction. He does not disappear, but he does not reorganize his world around her emotions. This communicates something powerful. His life has gravity. Her feelings are welcomed, not required. When she becomes more emotionally open, your role is to receive, not to pursue. Receiving does not mean passivity. It means you allow her to express without rushing to label, secure, or stabilize what is unfolding. When a woman feels free to experience emotion without pressure, those emotions deepen naturally. Men often misunderstand this and believe they must match her emotional energy. Stoicism teaches that matching emotion collapses polarity. Leading with calm, while emotion rises on the other side, creates attraction. Leading with emotion when emotion rises creates emotional overload. Another critical mistake men make at this stage is relaxing standards. They excuse behaviors they would not have tolerated earlier, believing emotional progress justifies compromise. This erodes respect precisely when respect is needed most. Emotional closeness without boundaries does not strengthen connection. It destabilizes it. The Stoic response is simple but demanding. You stay consistent. You remain warm without becoming dependent. You stay interested without becoming invested prematurely. You listen without trying to fix. You enjoy connection without seeking guarantees. This posture allows her feelings to attach to a stable emotional structure rather than chaos. It gives her nervous system something solid to lean into. And when a woman feels that her emotions can exist without controlling the dynamic, attachment becomes trust instead of anxiety. Attraction survives when one person remains grounded while emotion evolves on the other side. This is not indifference, it is leadership. And leadership is what allows feelings to grow instead of collapse under pressure. Section number 5. Why restraint is what allows feelings to deepen. At the stage where a woman is genuinely catching feelings, restraint becomes the deciding factor. Stoicism teaches that growth happens in space, not pressure. When emotions begin forming, they require room to settle, to attach, and to mature. Most men misunderstand this and attempt to accelerate the process, believing that more effort will create more certainty. In reality, acceleration creates instability. Restraint is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional discipline. A Stoic man remains engaged, present, and attentive, but he does not rush outcomes. He does not seek labels prematurely. He does not push for reassurance. He allows the connection to breathe. This posture communicates confidence far more effectively than emotional intensity ever could. When a woman's feelings deepen, her emotional system is evaluating whether the connection feels safe or overwhelming. Safety does not come from constant reassurance. It comes from consistency. When you stay steady while emotion rises, you become the anchor. And anchoring allows her feelings to settle instead of scatter. Most men fear restraint because they equate it with indifference. Stoicism teaches that true indifference is lack of care, while restraint is controlled care. You still show interest, you still listen, you still engage, but you do not collapse your structure to accommodate emotion. Your life continues moving forward, and she is invited into that movement rather than becoming its center. Another reason restraint works is that it preserves polarity. Attraction requires difference. When both people move emotionally at the same speed, the dynamic flattens. When one person remains grounded while the other experiences emotional movement, tension is maintained. That tension is not anxiety, it is interest, and interest is what sustains desire. Men often sabotage this phase by over-communicating. They text more frequently. They check in unnecessarily. They fill silence with reassurance. Silence, when calm, is not a threat. It is space. And space is where emotions echo. Stoicism teaches that silence used wisely strengthens connection because it allows emotion to be felt rather than managed. Restraint also protects respect. When you do not overinvest emotionally, you maintain boundaries. Boundaries signal self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation upon which attraction rests. When boundaries collapse, emotions become unstable. When boundaries hold, emotions feel safe to grow. The Stoic man understands that feelings cannot be forced into commitment. They must arrive there naturally. His role is not to guide her emotions, but to maintain his center so her emotions have something stable to attach to. This is why restraint is not passive. It is active self-command. At this stage, attraction either deepens quietly or begins to fade based on your behavior. If you remain steady, grounded, and self-directed, her feelings are allowed to evolve into trust and desire. If you rush, secure, or chase, her emotional system retreats to protect itself. Restraint is not about doing less. It is about doing what is necessary and nothing more. And that is the Stoic path to allowing real feelings to grow without destroying them. Section number 6. Why staying the same man is what makes feelings stick. The final mistake most men make when a woman starts catching feelings is believing that the man she is responding to must now evolve into something different. Stoicism teaches the opposite. What allowed her feelings to form in the first place was not change, but consistency of character. When you alter your emotional posture at the moment attraction deepens, you remove the foundation those feelings were beginning to attach to. A woman catching feelings is not falling for your effort. She is falling for your emotional structure, your calm, your direction, your boundaries, your self-command. These traits signal stability, and stability is what allows emotion to feel safe. When you suddenly become more emotionally reactive, more available, or more eager to secure the outcome, you interrupt that signal. Most men believe growth in attraction requires growth in emotional expression. They assume that if she feels more, they should reveal more, reassure more, and integrate more quickly. Stoicism teaches that premature emotional merging dissolves polarity. Polarity is not distance, it is differentiation. When you stop being distinctly grounded, her feelings lose their reference point. Staying the same man does not mean emotional detachment. It means emotional reliability. You show up with the same tone, the same pace, the same standards. You do not pull away, but you also do not lean in. You continue living your life as you did before her emotions surfaced. This communicates that your center is internal, not dependent. A woman's emotional system is constantly evaluating one question during this phase. Does this man remain steady when emotion enters the dynamic, or does he change to manage it? If you remain steady, her feelings deepen into trust. If you change, her feelings become cautious. Stoicism emphasizes that trust is not built through promises or reassurance. It is built through predictability of character. When your behavior stays aligned across different emotional contexts, her nervous system relaxes. And when her nervous system relaxes, attachment strengthens. Men who lose attraction at this stage often describe the experience as sudden and confusing. They felt things were going well, then everything shifted. What they fail to see is that they shifted first. They abandoned the version of themselves that created attraction out of fear of losing it. The Stoic man understands that fear is never the signal to act. It is the signal to return to principle. When you feel the urge to secure, reassure, or accelerate, that is the moment to slow down internally and re-anchor yourself in your own direction. Staying the same man is not stagnation. It is discipline. It is trusting that what created attraction does not need to be intensified to be maintained. It needs to be preserved. When you remain grounded while her emotions evolve, you become the constant in a changing emotional landscape. And constancy is what allows feelings to settle instead of scatter. This is the final Stoic insight. Attraction does not deepen because you do more. It deepens because you remain who you are when emotion enters the room. In short, what most men never understand is that attraction does not collapse because they did something wrong. It collapses because they stopped being who they were when it mattered most. Stoicism teaches that the moment emotion enters a dynamic is not the moment to change direction, but the moment to reaffirm it. When a woman truly starts catching feelings, she is not asking you to become more emotional, more available, or more reassuring. She is watching to see whether your inner order remains intact. Her emotions are moving, and she is unconsciously searching for something solid to attach them to. That solidity is not found in effort. It is found in consistency. Most men lose this moment because fear takes the lead. Fear of losing her. Fear of misreading the situation. Fear of not doing enough. And fear always expresses itself through behaviour. It shows up as over-explaining, over-communicating, and over-investing. In trying to secure her feelings, they destabilize them. Stoicism teaches that attraction deepens where calm remains untouched by emotion. When you stay grounded while her feelings evolve, you become the anchor. When you react emotionally to her emotional shift, you become part of the movement, not the structure. And emotion cannot attach to chaos. The paradox is simple. The less you try to manage her feelings, the safer they feel. The more you try to control the outcome, the more fragile attraction becomes. This is why so many connections fade right after they start to feel promising. Nothing external ruined them. Internal alignment was lost. A Stoic man does not chase feelings. He allows them. He does not rush clarity. He lets it arrive naturally. He does not seek reassurance. He trusts his direction. And because his life remains centered on purpose, discipline, and self-command, emotional attachment feels like an addition, not a threat. This is not emotional distance. It is emotional leadership. Leadership is not about intensity. It is about stability. And stability is what allows love, desire, and trust to grow without pressure. If there is one lesson to carry forward, it is this. When she starts catching feelings, do not become more. Become consistent. Do not lean forward emotionally. Lean inward. Return to your principles. Return to your pace. Return to the man she began feeling something for. Attraction does not need to be pushed. It needs to be protected from interference. And interference almost always comes from fear. When you understand this Stoic truth, you stop losing connections at the critical moment. You stop sabotaging attraction by trying to secure it.